Okay, it's turned on again, go ahead.
All right. There were 11 crewmen on board this airplane. Well, it just became my turn to operate the radar. Just a small console, and the window was blocked out. We were unable to see out or anything. We had to do everything by using that radar. Our object was, and this is Whidbey Island, there's a lot of water around that area, Seattle area. Puget Sound and all of that. So anyway, it was my turn to find a target, and then on the radio I would guide the pilot which way I wanted him to fly the airplane so that we could home in on this target. We were practicing as though we were going to bomb this target. Well, we're on target, flying down like this, and all of a sudden the airplane went zoom like this, almost standing on the edge of its wing, turning away. Now what the heck's going on? Well, then it comes to find out that the target that I had found turned out to be a Canadian destroyer.
Oh dear.
They saw us coming on their radar. They didn't know who we were or what we were doing. They thought it might be an attack. And they had their big guns pointed at us, ready to blow us right out of the sky. When the pilots could see what was those guns pointing right at him, they decided to leave quickly.
Hard left.
He literally stood that airplane on its side. Scared the living daylights out of me. Another time, we had flown down to Nellis Air Force Base, which is just outside of Las Vegas. In the summer, it was like 116 degrees on the runway. Well, we taxied out to the end of the runway. The runway was over a mile long, but we couldn't get clearance yet. There was something in the way. Well, in the airplane, it was not air conditioned. It was getting pretty darn hot. And I was sitting at the radar console. I wasn't using it, that's just where I was sitting. And I had a helmet on that was plugged in. I could hear everything that the pilot said, so I knew what was going on. Well, in the top of this airplane, there's a plastic dome. It's actually used, like when you're out flying over the ocean or something, you could stand up in that dome and use a sextant on the stars to be sure they knew where we were, because they hadn't really invented some of the modern location stuff that they use nowadays. So I stood up and unscrewed that dome and dropped it inside and climbed up there and sitting on top of the airplane with these two 16-foot fans blowing air on me. I was a whole lot more comfortable than all the guys sitting in the airplane. So finally I heard the tower give the pilots clearance to go, so I had to get back inside, close that thing up real quick. And then off we went. 116 degrees, the air is very thin. Airplanes do not like to fly when it's that hot. He used up every foot of that whole mile, and then it barely came off the ground. A few more feet and we'd have been out in the desert somewhere.
You sound kind of like a little bit of a trouble causer.
I didn't cause it. I just sat up on top of the airplane and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Targeting a Canadian destroyer.
Okay, Christine, you had a suggestion a little while ago, and I beat you to it, so what was your
Say
suggestion?
what?
Putting that arsenic in the coffee, you know,
Oh yeah.
trombone.
A lot of trouble causing. So did you ever get even with the guy that made you go to your knees after seeing the dead guy hanging?
Oh yeah. Later on, many years later, 15 or 20 years later, my friend had gone into the Navy, and he had come home on a furlough. Well, he knew my sister, who at this time was married and had a whole family, and he wanted to go see my sister. Well, my sister had a 1956 Ford Fairlane station wagon. And my brother-in-law, just for the fun of it, had mounted a great big truck air horn, about that long, underneath the hood. Had actually cut a hole beside the radiator, so the horn of that horn, the bell of that horn, stuck out by the radiator, but behind the grill. You couldn't see it. So we went over to see my sister, and I said, hey, open the hood and see what kind of engine this thing's got in it, hot rod engine. So while he was opening the hood, I got inside the car, and as soon as he opened the hood, I pulled the lever that blasted that horn. And my brother-in-law had just filled up the air tank at 150 pounds pressure. It sounded like a train whistle coming down. It literally knocked him about 10 feet back into the flower bed. And I said, gotcha. And then another time, my sister and her husband were going on vacation. They were going to fly out of San Francisco. And so they wanted me to go with them. They didn't want to leave the car in the parking lot. So I drove over with them. And then when they got in an airplane, to fly away, I took the car and drove it back home. Kept it for about a week. And then when it was time for me to go get them, this is when they were just building the two freeways alongside either side of San Francisco Bay. And there were two 4-lane roads still under construction, and they came to an intersection, 4 lanes and 4 lanes, with red lights and green lights all over the place. Very dangerous intersection. Well, not wanting to smash up their car, I was slowing down to almost poking along to make sure I knew what lights were on. Well, there was a big truck driver that didn't like me going so slow. So he blasted me with his air horn. He got up alongside me and blasted me with his air horn. Okay, says I. So then we got up out on the finished part of the freeway and going up to speed. Now with this hot rod station wagon that I was driving, it didn't take me very long to pull right up on beside his cab. And I let him have that horn with 150 pounds pressure. He jumped so hard, he literally hit his head on the top of the cab.
Good thing you didn't wreck.
Probably looking around for the truck he couldn't see.
He said,
Coming out
gotcha.
here.
What about the one you had, the car that had a bell in it?
Oh,
And what? A bell?
and that actually was my brother's car, but from about 16 years old or so, I drove it all the time because he had a motorcycle that he'd drive to work. So I would drive his car to school and back. Well, just for the fun of it, I had put what's called a wolf whistle. It works from vacuum. You can make it, yeah, how do you make it? Yeah, like that, yeah, but loud. And then I got an old school bell that worked on 12 volts. I mounted it under there. You press a button and ring this school bell. And then I had another one, this the bell that I had got somewhere. You just pull a thing and it go ding. Well, back in those days, and especially in San Francisco, all of the street lights were the kind where it said, stop, ding, go, ding, stop.
Had like a rotating
Yeah,
sign or
right.
something.
So I'd go over to San Francisco, and it didn't take much brains to tell when that thing was going to change. So when it said stop, all the cars were stopped, and about 5 seconds before it would change to green, I would pull my bell and go ding, and then I'd make the car jerk like this, and everybody would take off right through the red light. Because they heard it ding. They don't
You sure
look.
caused trouble.
They don't look. They just hear the ding, and away they go.
He is a troublemaker.
Well, the other cars were already stopped at this point.
Tell us about your mission.
Oh, well, I served a mission in what was then the southern states. It included South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. And I served in all the states except Alabama. I never got there. Nowadays, it's probably a half a dozen missions in that same area. But I had a good time. While I was there, they created the 258th stake in the church. How many are there now? About 3,000?
More like
Something like
5,000.
Many. I was there in Miami when the church built the Miami Chapel. And because it was so remote from everything else, they put a lot of money into the Miami Chapel and made it almost as grand as one of the temples. It was a fantastic building. And they sent David O. McKay, who was our prophet at that time. This was 1957. He went to Miami to dedicate this chapel. And his traveling companion was Elder Henry D. Moyle, who by trade, I think he was a lawyer, but he was urging the president, come on, president, we gotta go, we gotta catch an airplane and everything. Well, as he got out onto the front porch of this building, and I was standing around, a bunch of people wanting to get their picture taken with him, so, and this little boy came up to him and asked him if he could get his picture taken. And Henry D. Moyle was saying, come on, president, we gotta go. He said, oh, just cool it. This little boy wants his picture. So took his picture. And I thought, I was so impressed with that. This little boy was far more important than any airplane to him.
Just because you asked, there's 3,383 stakes as of the end of 2018.
And I was there when they organized, in Orlando, Florida, when they created number 258.
It's a lot of growth.
It's a lot of growth in that.
How about the missionary experience in Key West, Florida, with the lady who opened the door and practically jerked you in the building?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We've been tracting. Tracting is where the missionaries would go door to door and just talk to people. You're LDS, you know. So anyway, we met this young woman at the door, and my companion was so unimpressed that when it came time to go back for the appointment, he didn't even want to go. He wanted to just blow him off. I said, we can't do that. We made an appointment, we're going to go. So we went at the appointed time, knocked on the door. The door flew open, she almost took it off the hinges, and she just reached out and grabbed us and pulled us in the house. Her husband was sitting there, and by the time we got sat down, we were almost literally knee to knee. And we taught her the missionary lessons. They immediately wanted to be baptized. We baptized them both in the ocean. When we were driving from their residence, their apartment, down to the ocean, she had already read the Book of Mormon, cover to cover, Pearl of Great Price, half of the book Jesus the Christ, and parts of she'd read the entire New Testament, parts of the Old Testament. Baptized her. When she came out, she said, oh, I must look like a drowned rat. And the last I heard, he'd been discharged from the Navy back in the Los Angeles area, and they're both on a stake mission.
And we've heard from her when we lived in Livermore.
I'm sorry, what?
When we lived in Livermore, she actually contacted you.
I didn't remember that.
Well, it was this short little...
Last name was McMart.
Anyway, they remained faithful all those years.
Beautiful
That's
couple.
awesome.
And my companion didn't think it was worth going back.
Don't do all that reading if you're not serious.
Did you smell one?
How about the lady that was impressed with your first names being the same?
Oh, yeah. We knocked on this one door, I think it was in Georgia. Knock, knock, knock. I'm this tall, my companion was about this tall. Both wearing white shirts and dark jeans. I said, "Hi, I'm Elder Atkinson, and this is my companion, Elder, I forgot what his name is." She says, "Oh, twins with the same first name yet." Twins
Different last
Don't
names.
do twins the same name.
with the same first name yet.
Yeah. What if you took a break from
I'm not